This is Great Millstone Mailbag with another edition, here to feed the elect through the spirit and power of YAHAWASHI. All praises and glory is due to YAHAWASHI for giving us this truth, giving us this faith, giving us this knowledge and understanding. Now in this edition, I want to pay homage to a great man, and that would be King James, who was responsible for the King James Bible of 1611, which was a work that he put together with 54 scholars and translated the Bible from the Hebrew, the Greek, and the Latin. And the result is what we have today, which is the King James Bible of 1611, the authorized version. Now, the inspiration of this video came from a conversation I had with Elder Ramlab and a couple of other brothers. And I mentioned how King James was a sickly man. He was a man plagued with many illnesses. And to bolster my point, I went to Google, because it's worth a Google, and I typed in, was King James sickly? And a bunch of sites came up, and one of those sites was this site here, which I immediately clicked on and started reading it, and I discovered some facts about King James that I didn't know about. And I knew he was a sickly man, but I discovered some other stuff I didn't know about, so I said this would be a perfect opportunity to make a video and enlighten the brothers out there, because after all, we do use, we had Great Millstone among the different camps. We do use the King James Bible, the 1611 edition, to make our points and to teach the scriptures with. Those of us, beginning with Elder Tar on down, we know that the King James Bible, the 1611 edition, is the closest to the Hebrew. Now, there were other men in King James' day that had that took on the task of translating the Bible. You had the William Tinsdale, the Tinsdale Bible. But of all the individuals that took it upon themselves to translate the Bible from its original Hebrew and Greek text, the most famous was King James. And clearly, when you see the facts that I give you about King James, clearly you could see, or you will see, that the Most High YAHAWASHI was working with King James to help put his edition together. All right, it was definitely a work of the Spirit of the Lord YAHAWASHI, and hopefully after this lesson you'll have a newfound respect for King James and the work that he did. And it's my belief that King James is, he's back in the reincarnation, whoever he may be, and he's definitely in the truth. As a matter of fact, King James, those of you that have the red Bible that we use in camp, which is printed by the Watchtower Tract Society of the Jehovah's Witness, about the only thing that that they do that's worth anything is the red Bible, which is a pretty good study Bible because it's loaded with precepts. King James is described as the defender of the faith in the prologue. Okay, so King James is a great man indeed. As a matter of fact, I believe he was compared to King Solomon for his wisdom and his knowledge and understanding. So in this edition of the mailbag, I'll pay homage to King James. Now, this picture here that you see is pretty much a Renaissance art of King James. He really didn't look like this individual here. Here's a more accurate picture of what King James looked like. Okay, as you can see, he looks like a light-skinned so-called Negro, light-skinned black man, because at that time, black men, so-called black men, was ruling England. They were ruling Scotland. They were ruling Ireland. Now, King James, for those of you that don't know, even though he was king of Great Britain, which is also known as England, he was a Scot. In other words, he was born in Scotland, which is one of the reasons why rumors were circulated about King James by the British, because the Scots and the British had a ongoing war thing going. And you could see that in the movie Braveheart. You know, the Scots, which were also known as the Highlanders, they were warring with the British tribes. So what you had basically was black on black crime. You know, nothing new there, you know. But what is new, and what a lot of people don't know, is at that time, it was mostly so-called black people of color that was living over there in England, Ireland, and Scotland. Okay, so King James, as you can see here, he could pass for, you know, a light-skinned black man. As a matter of fact, he looks like David, the one-time mayor of New York City, David Dinkins. Okay, so here's a great man, and in this edition of the Mailbag, I will pay homage to this man, King James. Now, which I'll put this link of this page here, I'll put it in the description box so you brothers can click on it. What I did was I took some of the highlights from this web page in the interest of time and copied and pasted on here in a notepad or in WordPad, and we'll just go through it. It says pretty much what's said here is what's said over here. Okay, so it says King James the First of England. That was his title in England, and in Scotland his title was the Sixth, King James the Sixth of Scotland. Interesting facts. Now keep in mind, like I said, King James was a Scot, so those of you that believe that the Scots were so-called white people, how do you explain King James? Was King James a so-called white man? And King James is also known as the defender of the faith. You can clearly see that in the prologue in the Red Bible of the King James Version, the authorized version. So now you're going to tell me that an Edomite is a defender of the faith? See, those of you that believe that, that shows that you are ignorant to history. Okay, you had slaves that was coming out of England, Ireland, and Scotland during that time period, being sent over to America. All the slaves did not just come out of the west of Africa, man. You had slaves that was coming out, so-called Negroes, slaves that was coming out of Europe, different parts of Europe, Portugal, Spain, okay, Italy, all right, France, Germany, England. As a matter of fact, Liverpool was I know that for a fact because my father told me when he used to live in England, my father told me that there was a slave port in Liverpool. You know, the place where the Beatles are from, Liverpool, city in England. You had a slave port out there. Okay, so you had slaves coming out of England. You had slaves coming out of Ireland. You had slaves coming out of Scotland. Okay, so it's time for you, individuals that call yourselves Israelites that are not privy to this knowledge. It's time for you to get wise, man. It's time for you to stop being simple and start using, start seeing the big picture. Okay, but alas, a lot of you won't. A lot of you are just simple as you can damn be. So you ain't gonna wake up. The only time you're gonna wake up is when you see them nuclear missiles coming for your ass. That's when you'll wake up. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get into the interesting facts here. King James I was a Christian who wanted the Bible in the hands of the common man. Okay, and that spirit that he had was fueled by the Most High, YAHAWASHI, because the main Bible we use is the King James Bible. And it took him 9 years, I think, to complete the project. He had 54 scholars with him, and they were all fluent in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, okay, as well as King James himself. As a matter of fact, let's read on, because he's going to say that King James I was a Christian who wanted the Bible in the hands of the common man, commissioned the authorized King James Bible in 1611, fluent in Greek, Latin, French, English, and his native Scots. So this was not a stupid man. All right, and that's how we're supposed to be. You're supposed to know or want to know other languages. Okay, being in this truth. I even took it upon myself to teach myself Italian. Okay, because number one, I love the language. I like the language. All right. Number two, when you learn another language, in this case Italian or Spanish, it broadens your horizon in understanding the meaning of words. Okay, which is very useful in this thing of ours. You'll be surprised the power you would have if you understand the meaning of words. Very few people understand the true meaning of words. I'm talking about etymology. And there's power in that indeed. All right, but it remains for the individual to see it. So again, King James was fluent in Greek, Latin, French, English, and his native Scots. Schooled in Italian and Spanish. So, that's impressive. All right, and that's really how we're supposed to be. All right. Formed the foundation for what is now known as the British Empire by uniting warring tribes of Scotland and then enjoining the crowns of Scotland and England in 1603. Okay. He was the first, it is written, blessed is the peacemaker. So just upon that alone, we see that King James was a blessed man because he made peace between the Scots and England, which, like I said, back then it was pretty much black on black crime. Okay, they were both Israelites, but one group was calling themselves Scots, Scotland. Another group was calling themselves England, or English, Scottish, English. Okay. He was the first to call his new kingdom Great Britain. So the term Great Britain came from a so-called black man. How about that? King James. Let's bring his picture up again. Okay, this is what he really looked like. Or this would be more accurate. All right. Remember, you had something called Renaissance art. So, he went from looking like this to pretty much looking like this. Okay. All right, so it says he endured racism as a Scot ruling over the English. So that's where all the snide remarks about James being a homosexual and all that crap, that's where that came from. It came from the British throne because they hated King James. I'll give you an example. You had an individual by the name of Guy Fawkes. Guy Fawkes was he had a plot to try to kill King James. It was called the Gunpowder Plot, to blow up the palace where King James was made home. Plot was discovered and Guy Fawkes was executed. Now, when you see the movie V for Vendetta, there's a character in there by the name of Guy Fawkes. Looks like this character here. Well, actually, Guy Fawkes was a bad guy because he tried to kill King James. All right, he tried to bring anarchy to the throne. All right, now in the movie he's hailed as a good guy, V for Vendetta, but he's actually, those of us that know our history, he's actually a bad guy. Okay, so as a matter of fact, this is something, a still that I took from a page, I believe it's Wikipedia. It says Guy Fawkes, also known as Guido Fawkes, the name he adopted while fighting for the Spanish, was a member of a group of provincial English Catholics who planned the failed gunpowder plot of 1605. And I discovered that King James hated the Catholic religion. All right, he hated it, which once again shows you that the Spirit of the Lord, YAHAWASHI, was working with King James, because he hated the Catholic religion, which was prominent in England at that time. So, they had a gunpowder plot to try to kill King James, and Guy Fawkes was behind it, as I'm reading here, who planned the failed gunpowder plot of 1605. Fawkes was born and educated in New York. Okay, so that's just a little tidbit of information concerning King James. So reading on, it says he endured racism as a Scot, and I just gave you an example. ruling over the English, nevertheless had the love and admiration of many subjects. Years after his death, detractors tried to sully his good name. That's why today you'll hear people say that King James is a homosexual. You know, besmirchment, if that's a word, besmirch. That's where that comes from detractors who spoke ill of King James because they hated him, because he was a Scot. He was a Scot that ruled over the English throne. Okay. Unfortunately, it continues today, yet King James Version translators, yea, the king himself, had predicted such. So even King James predicted after his death that his name would be run through the mud. Okay. So King James was not only a wise man, he was a perceptive man. King James was sickly, having crippling arthritis, weak limbs, abdominal colic, gout, and a number of other chronic illnesses. So again, you know, a sign of a man of the Lord is to be sickly. Paul was sickly. Paul had a thorn in his flesh. Okay, it could have been a disease. Timothy was sickly because Paul told Timothy to use wine for his often infirmities. All right. Job was plagued with many illnesses. Okay. YAHAWASHI himself, and this was pointed out to me by Elder Ramlab. YAHAWASHI, in the book of Isaiah, the 53rd chapter, YAHAWASHI was described as a man acquainted with grief. Now, when you look up the word grief, it means it says sicknesses or illnesses. So even YAHAWASHI himself was sickly. Okay, so that's one of the signs of being a man of the Lord YAHAWASHI, to be sickly. Okay. I mean, not every man of the Lord YAHAWASHI will be sickly, but the majority are. You know, that's just one of the things we have to battle. We have to endure. That's one of the things we have to endure while being in this kingdom. When the scripture have said endure hardness, an example of the hardness is enduring infirmities in your body. You know, being constantly sick. Okay, so here you have an example in King James. So you sickly brothers, now you know. Now, King James was sickly, having crippling arthritis, weak limbs, abdominal colic, gout, and a number of chronic illnesses. He also had physical handicaps which affected his legs and tongue, coupled with numerous attempts on his life. And I just gave you an example of Guy Fawkes. He required constant attention and watch care. Okay. King James said this in the Basilicon Doran. The Basilicon Doran, let's read about it here. In 1598, King James the Sixth and First wrote Basilicon Doran, sometimes spelled Basilicon Doron, the kingly gift. That's what it means. Basilicon Doron means the kingly gift, as a testament to instruct his young son, Prince Henry, in manners, morals, and the ways of kingship. Now, what does that go back to? That goes back to a custom of Israel. That goes back to a custom of Israelites. Did not David instruct his son Solomon in the ways of being a kingship? All right. Did not, there's plenty of examples of certain kings in Israel that instructed their sons in the ways of kingship. So King James continued a time-honored tradition of an Israelite to instruct his son in the ways of kingship. Okay. This knowledge that we're in right now, we're being instructed in the ways of kingship. Pursuant to Exodus 19:6, the Lord said he would make us a nation of kings. So this knowledge that we're receiving now is to be instructed in the ways of kingship. All right. So more and more you can see that straight up King James was not just an ordinary Israelite. He was a heavy Israelite. Okay. Prince Henry would not live to take the throne. He died in 1612. Nevertheless, King James wrote that Basilicon Doran to instruct his son in the ways of kingship. So did that work that King James did was it written in vain? No. Even though his son died, I'm sure there were other kings that came in succession that used quotes from that manual that King James wrote, because everybody knew back then that James was considered a very wise man. Like I said, King James is compared to King Solomon. Okay. This is a quote that King James said. He said, "I am no papist, as I said before." Now, faith, papist, when he said papist, meaning from the papacy, the Roman Catholic Church, it shows you he had no affinity, no love for the Roman Catholic Church. He hated them. He hated that religion. That's why they tried to kill him. He used Guy Fawkes as the assassinator, which he failed, because the Spirit of the Lord, YAHAWASHI, was with King James to deliver him. "I am no papist, as I said before." Now, faith is the free gift of the Most High. I always talk about that, faith. You know, this thing of ours is all about faith, okay, pursuant to Ephesians 2:8. "As Paul saith," okay, a good citation is Ephesians 2:8. So King James even referenced what the Apostle Paul said. How about that? "It must be nourished by prayer, which is no thing else but a friendly talking to God, or to the Most High." So King James endorsed prayer. All right, which, beginning with Elder Tower on down, we endorse prayer. That's one of the ways to get close to YAHAWASHI, by praying. "Use oft to pray," and that's scriptural. "Use oft to pray when ye are quiet, especially in your bed." So that's good advice there, man. Those are sage words right there. You know, use oft to pray when ye are quiet, especially in your bed. All right, so that's pretty much it. I mean, like I said, you know, I'll put the link. There's more facts, but I copied and highlighted the more important ones. But there's more facts. As a matter of fact, here, there's certain individuals that wrote about King James, their opinion of the man, King James. As you see here, let me give you an example. F.A. Inderwick wrote in 1891, "James had a reputation for learning, for piety, for good nature, and for liberality." Okay. In 1603, Sir Roger Wilbraham wrote, "The king is of sharpest wit and invention, and of the sweetest, most pleasant, and best nature that I ever knew, desiring nor affecting anything but true honor." So those people that talk negative about King James, you know, they're ignorant to history, the true history of King James. So what I want you brothers to do is continue the discussion on the comment board. You know, those of you brothers who just might discover something, an interesting fact about King James, you can put it on the comment board. And I encourage a discussion concerning King James. I mean, I took time out in this edition of the mailbag to pay homage to what I think is a great man, King James, and the great work that he did, seeing that that's the Bible that we use. So hope you brothers enjoyed this edition of the mailbag, and I'll be back with another edition. This is Great Millstone Mailbag, here to feed the elect through the spirit and power of YAHAWASHI, and say shalom.